Scott's handing out the news releases at this time. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for joining us live on the internet as we live stream this news conference today. The use of and manufacture of marijuana wax is on the rise, not only across the country, but here in Minnesota as well. Marijuana wax is a street name for marijuana concentrates. They can be deadly, and you'll hear more about that here today. The consequences for manufacturing and consuming the drug are very dangerous, and we're here to raise awareness about that and tell you about some recent cases around the state of Minnesota. You're going to hear from several people today. First, Chief Blair Anderson, St. Cloud Police Department. Chief Anderson will discuss murder charges that were filed against two men today who were manufacturing marijuana wax. That manufacturing operation led to the death of an elderly woman in St. Cloud. You'll hear from Brian Marquardt, the DPS statewide gang and drug coordinator. Brian will talk about the dangers of marijuana wax manufacture and use, and the incidents around the state of Minnesota. You'll hear in a recorded interview from a Duluth mother whose teenage son recently overdosed on marijuana wax. And while he survived the ordeal, she wants to make sure that we understand the dangers, and we hear from a mom who's very concerned about this very powerful drug. You're also going to hear today from Chief Gordon Ramsey of the Duluth Police Department, who will talk about the incidents in Duluth and what he's seen as well. So we're going to begin today with Chief Anderson.
Thank you. Good morning. This morning, the Stearns County Attorney's Office filed 2 counts of third-degree murder each against Justin Edward Pick of Sartell and Dustin Ross Zablocki of St. Cloud. The charges result or surround a house fire, which claimed the life of 85-year-old Sally Douglas. It is alleged in the complaint that the cause of the fire was the manufacture of BHO, butane hash oil. For me, this is the first case of its kind that I have seen in my 20-year law enforcement career, but there's so many dangers that surround the manufacture of this hash oil, and this is just another tragic example of how drugs and illicit drug use and the behavior that surrounds it, destroys lives. I want to thank, before I forget, the St. Cloud Police Department, Lieutenant Jim Steve and his staff. Lieutenant Steve heads up our Criminal Investigations Division. I want to thank the St. Cloud Fire Department, St. Cloud Fire Chief Bill Mund, Assistant Chief Dean Roble, and Fire Marshal Mike Post. And I also want to thank Stearns County Attorney Janelle Kendall and her staff. This was truly a collaborative effort, and we hope that these charges and the subsequent prosecution will bring some relief to this family in this horrible event. Again, I've never seen anything like this, but clearly it is proliferating, and it's an awful thing, but it is a reminder that this kind of behavior and illicit drug use is everywhere. It doesn't matter how big or how small your city is, and we'll be a lot more diligent going forward to help prevent these tragedies. I'm going to introduce now Bruce Marquardt, who is the statewide drug and gang coordinator for the Office of Justice Programs.
Thanks, Chief. I'm Brian Marquardt, the statewide gang and drug coordinator, and this is a very serious drug that is now coming to Minnesota, and we want to make sure that we get awareness out to all of the people in Minnesota that sales and manufacture of illicit drugs won't be tolerated, and B, raise awareness for the dangers of this dangerous drug. We're seeing a growing increase in the marijuana concentrates across the state. Wax is just one of the street terms for a class of products of marijuana concentrates. It goes by other names of honey oil, butter, dab, and 710, which if you type in your phone and flip it upside down spells oil. These products can be smoked in a water pipe called dabbing, or also in a vaporizer, very similar to e-cigarettes. The typical leaf marijuana on the street has a THC content, the active ingredient, of about 14%. These concentrates have a range of 30 to 90+% THC, so it makes them very potent. It can create a more intense physical and psychological effect in those that use it and may cause hallucinations and psychotic-like episodes. The long-term health effects of these concentrates is not known. Shortly you'll hear from a mother from Duluth that had an incident where her child had one of these episodes. Butane hash oil is one manufacturing method used. They fill a cylinder of various materials. They fill that cylinder with marijuana and introduce butane into the cylinder, and what drips out the bottom is the butane hash oil. Some attempt this process in a closed space or basement. Butane is extremely flammable and can cause a flashover fire similar to that that caused the death in St. Cloud. And we want to prevent any additional tragedies or injuries from those type of manufacturing methods. Minnesota, we've seen an increase in the sales and manufacture of these products. We want to prevent any additional deaths or injuries, but an additional concern is that while they're manufacturing these, some of the butane or some of the chemicals used in the process from the cylinder itself actually leach into the finished product, and it causes grave concern, health concern, if they end up smoking butane. We currently have 23 violent crime enforcement teams throughout the state. Most of these teams are seeing a dramatic increase in wax or marijuana concentrate products, and many of them have discovered manufacturing processes. None of them have been to the level that the chief of St. Cloud explained, where it has caused a death. One case involves the suspect filling cartridges of these vaporizers and actually selling the oil in these cartridges on the street. I'm very concerned for the young people who are experimenting with the drugs and those using this very potent form of marijuana. These labs are similar to methamphetamine labs in that the chemical used is extremely flammable and explosive. If they manufacture indoors or in closed spaces, there's a high risk of injury or death. Teenagers, young adults that may be experimenting with marijuana, they think it's a better high. They think it's more concentrated. They're going to have a better or a better high. It's a lot more easier to conceal. It's much smaller. These are dangerous products, and we just want to make sure that the public is aware that these products are out here and all of the dangers associated with it. I thank you, and I'll introduce Chief Gordon Ramsey from Duluth Police Department.
Good morning, Gordon Ramsey from Duluth PD. I first heard about wax probably a year and a half ago in some of the West Coast states where marijuana has been legalized. Had not heard about any issues here in Minnesota or in our region in Duluth really until about the last 4 or 5 months. Several months ago we put a bulletin out to our officers because we were hearing about it being found on the street. It also I think brought attention to our officers that this trend was happening in Duluth. I teach a class at UMD, and last night I was teaching and I asked how many students in the class of 40, how many were aware of this wax substance. And the majority of them seem to know about it. I don't believe my friends who have teenage children or young adult children are aware of this and the potential and dangers associated with it. It seems that the drug culture today wants to find the ultimate high, and from the information that we have is that this does provide the high, and is in the video you're going to see shortly, you'll hear a mother discuss that, what her son went through. But it is concerning, and I think that some of the ingredients that are being used, the butane and some others, are what parents are going to have to look for and be aware of, that their children are, that they're educating them and keeping them away from this stuff. So a few weeks ago in Duluth, 2 teenagers overdosed while using marijuana wax, and fortunately both survived. One mother who wishes to remain anonymous wanted to speak about the dangers of marijuana wax and to give really everybody a firsthand impression of just how scary this drug can be to our children and people in our society. So the Minnesota Department of Public Safety recently interviewed the woman, and we'd like to play a portion of that interview right now.
He was seeing the world as a cartoon. He said everything was very bright colors. He was also hearing sirens, and he was hearing people yelling, and there was, nothing there. It was completely quiet in our vehicle. When we got home, he had started to throw up. So at that time, I called the nurse, our clinic nurse, to see, what needs to be done. So she and I decided I would bring him down to the emergency room. As we were getting him ready, he started to throw up some more, and he was having trouble breathing. So at that time, I was scared as hell, and I called 911. He kept holding his throat, telling me that he couldn't breathe, and I was just scared, not knowing if he was able to breathe, if he was going to die before they even got there. I had no idea. I was so scared. I am very worried. This is a very scary drug that nobody knows very much about, and I don't think anybody really knows the side effects that could happen in the future too, so this is really scary that it's becoming more and more popular. I do think it's a wake-up call, and it would be really great if we could stop it before it gets too bad.
For media, we will be sending the video, the complete video, the complete interview to you through a link and following the news conference. The mother has given us permission to share the video not only with you, but she would like you to share it as well as you see fit, and we'll send you the link so you can make that assessment and pass it along. At this time, we'll open it up for any questions for any of our speakers here today.
Bruce, this is a weird thing for us, but who shot that video? Who
Certainly.
verified, swear to God, that woman really is the mother of the son?
We can verify that. That interview was conducted by Department of Public Safety Office of Communications staff. So our staff did do the interview, conduct the interview, and vetted the woman as well. You bet. So any questions?
Any data at this point on number of seizures, number of related incidents involving wax?
It's a good question, Brent.
Because this substance is fairly new to Minnesota, the Office of Justice Programs keeps tracks of statistical analysis for marijuana, but because it's so new, we don't have a separate category for marijuana concentrates. What I'm getting is information from all of the violent crime enforcement teams. You may know them as drug task forces, commanders giving me the information about seizures and what they're seeing.
Chief Anderson, if I can, Chief Ramsey mentioned that his timeline for when he became aware of this and when he started to see it in his town. When your officers and when the firefighters arrived at this house in St. Cloud, can you talk a little bit about what they knew about this, or was this a new thing to them when they arrived that day?
Yeah, as far as I know, they had some knowledge of it, but of course, a protracted investigation was able to determine that is exactly what they were doing. They were indeed manufacturing this butane hash oil, and so thank goodness they were able to put the pieces of that puzzle together to help us make a determination here and bring some resolution to this case and eventually get a murder charge filed, or 2 counts each on both of these people.
Is there any concern about the passage of the medical marijuana law that, some people believe that the people authorized to be dispensaries, are going to do the right thing, and this isn't going to increase this problem? Is there any concern from law enforcement about that?
Hell yes. I'm deeply concerned about it, but as is the case, it is the law, and so we certainly will keep our eyes and ears open, and we'll deal with whatever issues come up as they do.
I have some questions, but none of a bunch of us have ever heard of this. This is new to us. And I think back to meth and making meth. So I'm gonna ask these questions under the umbrella of if you were watching someone doing something strange, what would you look for? In other words, what are they buying? What do they need to make this? What kind of environment do they need to make it? What would be suspicious that someone should call law enforcement and say, hey, there's something weird going on?
So all that's needed for them to manufacture these concentrates is some type of cylinder, whether it be glass, metal, or PVC, not very large, and butane. Those are the only ingredients that you're going to need to manufacture this.
Butane like you'd get to refill your lighter.
Correct, yes, butane like you'd get to refill your lighter.
Do they grind this marijuana up somehow?
Yeah, so the marijuana is ground up so that it's a little finer and then packed into this cylinder. It has a smaller tube on one end where the resin actually drops out of, and on top is where the butane is actually inserted into the tube that breaks down the marijuana into the resin.
So it's not heated, it's just a chemical reaction that happens in the reservoir.
After the resin drops out of the cylinder, they may additionally heat it to help remove the butane that contains in it, and then it may either be honey oil, a softer substance, or turned into a harder substance similar to the wax.
So the flashing of the butane is the immediate danger.
The butane is heavier than air. If these people are conducting these operations in a confined space, butane sinks. If it finds an ignition source, you'll have the flashover.
What's the breakdown between these manufacturing operations in terms of how many are for recreational or personal use, or how many are for the purposes of maybe distributing to other people in mind?
Yeah, I have no statistics about how much that would be, whether it be for recreational or for sale. And real honestly, in my world, I don't care. It has the danger of the manufacture method, and that's my primary concern is public safety.
And is it clear, I know you were regarding statistics, it's still kind of brand new right now, but are you seeing this coming in from a variety of portions throughout the state, or is it clustered anywhere? Is it fairly widely represented in Minnesota right now?
No, out of the 23 violent crime enforcement teams, most of them are seeing. There isn't necessarily a cluster anywhere in the state that is seeing more than others. In regards to whether it comes from out of state, yes, they're seeing some of these products being shipped in from out of state, but our primary concern for public safety right now is the manufacture of these products and the danger of butane.
And to be clear, this sounds like this is both a different product and a different high than an ingestible marijuana.
So marijuana concentrates can be infused into edibles, or they may be sold separately. The products we're talking about now are separate. The dab, smoked in a pipe, or the honey oil are separate from edibles.
When you talk about overdosing, are there any concerns or any kind of any indications that an overdose on a substance like this could produce a long-term or a fatal result?
I'm not a medical professional. You'll have to talk to medical people about the longer term or the health effects of the actual use.
At this point, that's unknown still.
Is there an age demographic that you see a spike in this age demographic or type of person using it as opposed to general?
Generally, we are seeing younger adults. I don't have an actual age bracket, but younger adults are our primary age.
Is there anything you would tell parents or maybe someone who lives in an apartment building with a younger demographic that's maybe an adult, not a child, things they would see that would say either there's possible manufacturing or use?
So the cylinders obviously will be the first giveaway, or many butane cans. And I think we just want to make sure that parents are having open conversations. This mother in Duluth had a very good relationship with her son and was able to have that dialogue that something wasn't right. And hopefully other parents are doing that with their own kids, having that dialogue about how dangerous this substance is.